as Dave said, I'm not really into the theory, I'm more into the how you can do things. And so I joined Bill a little over a year ago, and I walked in and I said, "Are we doing PLG?" And they're like, "Yes, we're doing PLG." And I'm like, "Okay, how are we doing it?" And the answer I got was like, "Well, we go to our analytics team and we have them pull a list. And then we take that list and we upload it into Marketo. And it takes about 48 hours. And then we get all these approvals and then we send out an email." And I was like, shoot, that sounds terrible. And I decided straight out of the gate, this is not scalable. This is not PLG. This is sending emails to lists, which we all do. And how can we make that better? How can we make that scalable? And so when I walked into, oh, by the way, I'm going to just have memes in here because I don't really have any good pictures for you, and screen caps are boring and all of that, so enjoy. But I wanted to find a way that we as Bill, so for some perspective, Bill is two products that we have that have come together. So we have a lot of separate databases, data structured in different ways, a lot of complexities I hadn't really encountered before. I've worked with big databases, I've worked as a consultant, I've done a lot of migrations, but how do I blend all of these things together? So when I walked in, I'm starting this GTM tech role. I'm like, I'm not gonna buy a new product for the first 90 days. I'm just not gonna do it. And within 3 months, I bought Inflection. And part of that was I kept running into the same problem over and over with Marketo. And as Dave mentioned, I've used Marketo for a very long time. I love it. It does some things really well. What it doesn't do well is customer emails with product data. And you can do it, you can hack it, but it takes a lot of effort. And we were kind of getting to an inflection point where it was hard to justify the level of effort for what we were doing. So one of the things that we continuously ran into was that we just could not get product data in Marketo in a way that was structured for our business. So I'm sure all of you here that are deep Marketo nerds know about the custom object. Oh, it's so fun. Or you can have many to one and one to many. And yeah, okay, try doing that for many user IDs for separate products. I mean, it just gets insane. And then I get limited by, oh, do I want to trigger this in real time? Oh, you can't. You can only batch it. And then I'm waiting for data to come in from our database. So the whole thing is just like, all right, this is pretty lame. And then I look at our onboarding emails. I know they showed our ad in the last session, but I look at our onboarding emails and I'm like, I'm personally embarrassed by these. It's like, welcome to Bill, do this thing that you maybe already did. So I set up the custom object. We got data going into that. We reduced the number of lists we were doing, but it still wasn't enough. And we also then tried to pipe that data directly into Marketo. Okay, we have Segment, amazing. We have Signals. We have another tool that can put data in there. Great, let's do it. And blow up the API and nearly shut our database down. So again, not super scalable for us with the custom object. We also now we have data in the custom object. We're triggering some emails, but can we really make it personalized in the way we should? I mean, for those of us that have been in this industry for a while, personalization used to just be like, hey, first name, that was a big deal, right? Now I'm like, we have all this data, what is our excuse for not hitting you precisely at the right moment with the thing that you need to learn, especially in a tool like what we have where we're selling to people in finance, people that are accountants, people that know technology but don't know it super well. I should be telling them exactly what to do. And so I can't do that, even with the custom object. We also have what we call basic receivables BRs, which is a subgroup of people that sign up to Bill to get paid through Bill but aren't actually using our product. We've wanted to market to them for a very long time, and again, the list insanity makes it nearly impossible. So that was another part. I'm trying to see what else do I have here. Oh yeah, inflexible filters, segmentation. I mean, all of these things kind of fold right into the custom object. And finally, I know that this isn't always a big deal depending on your budget, but Marketo did us really wrong, really bad. We were halfway through our cycle, and we were having issues with our campaigns staying on, and we got hit with a 50% increase on our already very high contract just to keep the lights on. No added records, no added functionality. And this pissed off my boss to no end. And we immediately started looking at, should we go to Pardot or Salesforce, Marketing Cloud. Well, we all know it's still Pardot. And no, we couldn't do that. Eloqua wouldn't even talk to us, which was really funny. HubSpot was like, this is pretty, but kind of for kindergartners. No offense to anyone that uses any of these tools. They all have their place. But what we landed on was, I said, what if we could just fix this one part? What if we just focus on customers and we try to fix that part? And so we decided to actually bifurcate. So right now we are in the process of taking all of our customer records out of Marketo, putting them into Inflection, and then only running demand generation from Marketo for now. If you decide to look at Inflection, they price you based on the number of emails you send, not the number of records you have. So I went from being able to having to do all this craziness to pull people out of my Marketo database and keep myself compliant to I can have all 13 million records in there and never stress about it. For those of you that haven't demoed it also, there you can put tokens inside of tokens, and for people that get excited about that, it's pretty cool. So that's what this is about, this meme. So as I mentioned, I've done a lot of Marketo migrations, and so I walked into this super confident. I was like, yeah, I could do this in my sleep. I've migrated Marketo 30 plus times. So this is normally how you run the Marketo migration, right? You're like, okay, assets, start with those. They take forever. Okay, put the assets over. All right, now we're gonna set up Salesforce sync. Okay, data's syncing, assets are in there. All right, run some QA, the programs work, launch them, we're good to go. You don't do that if you decide to change over to a PLG motion. What I would do instead, yeah, this is a thing I really wish I had done. But I would start and just take a lot of time with your data, because this is, I was at a company where everyone is like, we know our data. We feel very confident about it. I felt very confident about it. My boss felt very confident about it. We have since uncovered so much complexity within our data, how it maps, how it looks, where it sits, how we want to bring it in. And so I would just take a ton of time to figure that out. Not only that, you might have the data, but how you're tracking signals, so we right now use Segment for that, that is actually a totally different structure than how our data is structured. And there were gaps in that too, which I'll get into. And then I would just figure out what integrations you want to do. So this is a little bit reverse of how I've done Marketo migration. So start with all of your data. Get your data aligned, because you're going to have to map that and figure that out first. Then I would just build brand new programs. I wouldn't even bother copying over what you have. Right now, we've taken everything we have in Marketo, and it's been such a square peg, round hole situation of oh, cool, there's this nurture in Marketo. Let's put this in Inflection. And Vic, our amazing account manager, is like, why? Why are you doing this? And I'm like, I don't know, because it seemed like a good idea at the time. And now I'm like, I would never do it again. Start over. You are now going to have more data, more accessibility than you could have imagined. It's kind of in Simba, where he's like, all the light touches. It's like that. You're going to have all the data you could possibly want. Why build the same crappy thing that you've, cornered yourself into? Take a lot of time for QA, because, again, the data model is super different. And then I would launch in phases. Another big takeaway for myself has been have just a primary point of contact that's running the whole thing and kind of homogenizing all the information, and make sure this person kind of knows architecture and knows the teams. And then, another part of it, because we're a larger company, is we're building brand new relationships with data engineering, with customer marketing, and I've now started to invest in weekly meetings with them, and while I do a lot of weekly meetings, building those relationships feels super important for the next phase of this and really getting everybody on board, because again, this is a thing that sounds really cool in a PowerPoint presentation and a really nice theory, and then you try to do it and it is like turning around a giant boat. Like, it is very hard. And so getting people emotionally bought into what you're doing and feeling excited about it, I think it's important to do that. So I'll get into a little bit of like the complexity that I found in product data. As I mentioned before, we thought we understood our data. We knew we had, one database from the bill proper product, which is what we call APAR, which is for accountants, and that's a piece of software that allows people to pay their bills and all that good stuff. And then we have another product that is a credit card that people can synchronize these things. They can use them together. Well, the structure for how somebody sets up a credit card and that product data and the structure for somebody using APAR are just completely different. In the credit card world, people will have hundreds of credit cards for certain companies. That's many user IDs to like one account. And on the other side, you might have just one person in accounting, running this piece of software. So just those two things being at odds and then trying to back that into a system is a lot. So understand that data structure, dive into it, talk to your data eng team. I mean, we had kind of talked to data eng before this, but like now we are best friends from the amount of time we spent together. Also, understand how the data maps. So one of the things for us, and anyone that has a database with millions of records, is you have duplicates. They're there. Don't deny it. And understanding how that duplicate logic maps back is actually super important. When we came to Inflection, we learned that they map to like the oldest record, and so that actually reconfigures again how we then would trigger some of these emails that we're trying to send out. Also, you can only connect one database, so like make that count. Again, I'm telling you about two separate products. There are two separate databases. I then had to put in the work to make sure I had data going into just one database to connect. So this is a lot of, for those of you with multi-product larger companies, it's important to know. And then I'm in a little bit of a rebuild because I didn't understand all of this. So I would say, like, again, spend a good, like, I would have taken probably 6 months to just dive into data and not worry about building anything if I could do this again. I mentioned before using Segment. So Segment is a signaling tool. I'm sure everyone's familiar with it. It's been around for a very long time. Or excuse me, Twilio Segment now. So we track all of our behavior through that, right? So within our product, they've been tracking, oh, this person clicks on this thing and does this thing for a long time. What they haven't necessarily been doing is tying that event data back to an individual person and then putting that data together. So there are different kinds of calls inside of Segment. And so learning the difference between those calls, how those calls work together, and then making the request of it. So a big learning here has been, while it sounds easy to say, oh, you are tracking the person, you know who they are, can't you just group that together? The answer from engineering is like, it's many months of work. So knowing this ahead of time, if I could like re-walk into this, I would start with data eng and be like, hey, I'm going to need group calls from Segment marrying together event activity and who the person is so that I can trigger these particular types of campaigns for these business use cases. Going through this process too has really helped data engineering understand what our business use cases are and like has helped me flesh them out and outline them. So I don't know, take some time to do that early on. And then the other really cool part about Segment that, again, this is what makes Inflection so different from using a Marketo database is, you pair a database to Marketo or generally any other system, and you're kind of limited to that. And you want a new field, like, okay, go talk to somebody, okay, submit the request, okay, get the field added. Or if you're lucky and in a small company, you can do it quickly. But still, there's a lot of legwork to getting fields added, and then there's kind of this, like, It's like adding a new field to Salesforce. It's like it feels kind of dirty, but you're not sure why, you know? So like with segment, you actually get to bypass that whole product. You can be like, hey, can you just throw in a new event in there and then like group it together? And it's way more scalable, way more doable. So I would go that route. I relied really heavily on our Redshift database, and like what I'm looking forward to doing in the future is not that. And I'm sure everybody else is relieved by it too. You then also unlock the ability to do it in real time, right? So when you're connecting like an old database, or not an old database, but you know what I mean, like the one that takes forever to sync, you're limited to when that sync comes in for when you can trigger it. So like with Segment, you can do things in real time. And this has like far-reaching implications for how people interact in your product. I mean, for us, we know a lot of the things that are being outlined here. Like, what are the actions somebody's supposed to take, and then they're successful in them and they're not successful. Like one of them for us is like adding a bank, and plenty of people click on the button to add a bank and then never add a bank account. And it's like, if I can trigger an email that's like, hey, you didn't add your bank account, do you need some help with that? Like that's huge. And I wasn't able to do that before without the multi-day list, which then makes it pretty much useless, right? So Segment can also give it to you in real time. And then so reporting becomes different too then, right? So this is again like things I would negotiate earlier ahead of time. So right now, what we're trying to do to take our segment data, or excuse me, to take our inflection data and get it back to our database so we can report, because we do all of our reporting out of one database like most places do. We're sending it through Segment. Now, that increases our number of segment calls. And so we did not turn this feature on for quite some time out of the fear that we were going to blow this up. So again, if you go this route, negotiate getting additional calls so that you can do that reporting like immediately so you can measure that impact right out of the gate. I would also take, time to make sure that you're creating the right customer journeys with that data. So it's a lot of data. It's a lot of information. Taking the one-to-one, standard welcome emails, like, does that work? Is that working? I would change that. And then keep in mind, like I mentioned the BRs earlier, right? The group of people that we wanted to market to and not be able to market to. So we had to come up with a backfill strategy to get people into our database. So the second you turn Segment on, you start having people come in, like in real time, the second they're in the product. But then the question is, what about the people that have been in the product that are not in Segment right now, that aren't, clicking or doing anything? That's where we did the backfill through our Redshift connection. And I feel like I might have done that sooner if I had gotten there. It took us a while to get there and figure out how we were going to backfill it. You could have the option too of like doing it through Segment in a possibly more complicated way with engineering. But my point kind of with all of this is like, figure out how to backfill, figure out how to map that data in, and overall like then restructure and rethink of how you're going to approach everything. So I mentioned this before, don't migrate any programs. Just don't waste your time at all. We had these very linear nurtures. Anyone that's used Marketo knows you're kind of limited to like moving people maybe between streams, but you can't like have conditional logic. Or I guess you could. You could traffic cop your way through that and like hate your life with a bunch of request campaigns. But overall, it doesn't support that functionality. So I would instead just rebuild them, and again, think of the different indicators. Like there's a lot of really great content that's been said. I know Chris had a session on, different emails to trigger and whatnot, but take it like a step further. Like here's the welcome email, but what are the necessary steps? And then once they've taken them, do you want to invite them to your community? What are the other teams in marketing that you can like leverage now that before, again, would have been pretty hard? You obviously wouldn't want to invite somebody to like a customer community who hasn't set up the product yet, right? But you may want to invite somebody that's like gotten in quickly to do that. So that's, do the branching logic. It's also though, like for me, having done this for a long time, I find this to be a little hard. It's kind of hard to think that way and think outside of the box. and think into this motion. So one thing that we're doing is bringing everybody together and having some brainstorming sessions. We're currently segmented by different verticals. So we have different GMs. And so within those GM orgs, I'm going to the person that owns the engineering component, the person that owns the product, and the person that owns the customer marketing, and asking them for their ideas of how they want to do this. And another thing that I sort of believe in is just like starting small here, doing something rather than trying to rebuild all of our nurtures. Yeah, starting with something, getting something out the door, that way you can measure it and iterate from there. I also feel like this is how we all feel about PLG. It's like we know it's the iceberg. We know there's so much like unmined data there, and things that we can do, but we're not doing it. So this is how I feel inside about what I'm working on. Finally, like a few more things that you'll encounter if you decide to bifurcate and go the route that we're going. I would, universal unsubscribe is a real pain in the butt. I put this particular meme up here because I really hate preference centers. I think they're stupid, and I don't think anyone uses them, and the amount of time it takes to architect one is a waste of time, and I will die on this hill. But, if you have one of those complex ones, have fun mapping that. We were actually just talking at lunch. We bought a tool, and it's still hard. So think that through. Remember that you have to warm up your domain again. So like do that in phases. Again, that's kind of where I was saying like start small, iterate. So I keep that in mind kind of like in the project planning phase. So right now, since we have 2 systems, we're probably gonna create more duplicates. Granted, that's because we're gonna continue to run programs out of Marketo that some customers may participate in. And so we've been having to think through, okay, so if someone comes through the sign-up flow in Marketo, but we've deleted them from Marketo, and they exist in Salesforce still, like, what does that process look like? If you want to know what we're going to do, come talk to me, because it's too boring to talk about up here. And then, also don't forget that there might be people you don't want to include either in your reporting or in your database, or just include like a flag. For us, we have people that are in Salesforce that are strictly there to get service. So we call them service contacts. And so we don't want those, so we have a flag for them so we can filter them out of our communications. Here's the good news. What we're currently unlocking right now. Real-time personalization, which is what I mentioned before, being able to, send emails to customers that say relevant things as opposed to like really generic stuff. I think the bigger impact, and we're also right now in deploying Clay, and we're really looking forward to using Clay to augment how we're doing our segmentation, but being able to segment our audiences differently, get far more granular than we were before. Faster time to launch. I can't say, enough about this, because my good friend Ritika over here used to have to pull these lists, and now my personal goal is to get her to never pull another list again. So she used to be Inflection, and now we have Inflection, which is huge if you think about it. Like, it's going to allow us to scale and get more out. Like, we're a big company. We should be sending emails all the time, and it should not take, 2, 3, I don't even know, millions of weeks is what it felt like. I mentioned the cost efficiency too. I actually can't really harp on this one like enough. The amount of money that I was paying for Marketo and just like the amount of hoops I'm, in some ways still jumping through, eventually not going to be jumping through, is really big. I think, I'm gonna be getting back probably about $500,000. And that's a lot of money to do something else with. Yeah, ask me about my Marketo contract rate. I will tell you it is bad. So I know like cost isn't always a thing, but I do think here it kind of makes a difference because it does allow you to scale more and test more and do more. Having unified customer view, is priceless, right? Before that, we weren't able to. Before this, actually, we couldn't see anything about any customers. We could pull a list. We could kind of know what they've done. Now we can see, drill into each customer exclusively. And then we are seeing higher activation rates actually coming out of inflection with the personalization with my just copy paste. So soon it will be even better than that. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you.